So if you're watching this on YouTube, welcome. My name is Kirsten Broderick. I'm the founder of North Scale. We do performance coaching and mental resilience training, mostly for executives and teams. But all of our practices are based in the practice, and it's a practice of just sitting, of getting still, listening, observing. Again, a couple more people came on. What I was saying right before you came on, don't believe a word I say, right? I'm giving you the dregs of my experience. You know, it's like the used tea bag, the hops after the beer have been made, the grapes after the wine have been made. I just speak from my experience, and that may be helpful, but ultimately you must find out for yourself. This is the work of getting quiet enough to see yourself and trust yourself. I shifted my setup here a little bit. So I keep the Buddha right back there. He's now out of focus a little bit. I keep the Buddha there, not because he was a god, but he was a man who had to do this practice of stopping and sitting every day of his life. He sat, as we're about to sit in a few moments, in quiet stillness for 4 hours a day to the day he died. And to my point about the dregs, about nothing I say being it, because it's not it, his dying words, the Buddha, Shakyamuni, right? And that was his Buddha name, his given name, his birthday. I'm Kirsten Broderick, right? That's my given name. He was Siddhartha Gautama. When he became Buddha, right, they gave him the name Shakyamuni, which literally means the silent one from the clan of Shakya. His teaching was silence, just presence to life as it is. And that was powerful, so powerful that now you can get his face in Marshalls, right? Oh, we have a visitor. Hey, bud. Little old man is jumping back up again. He's getting his legs again. His dying words were, to paraphrase, don't believe a word I say. Don't take my word for it. You must go find out for yourself. You must go find out for yourself. And in my experience, doing this sitting now for almost 25 years, the only way I really ever find out for myself is when I get still and quiet, when I observe, when I listen, when I stop. So with that said, let's do the real work, what I consider the most important work of a lifetime. Oh, he's gonna come right up. He's gonna get right in it. Come on. He's got like one lame leg now, so I gotta help him. Hey, babe. Visits from Yuki. Wow, he's such a grandpa. He used to cry so cute. Now it's like, old man. All right, so let's do the real work. Pause. Just, even if you're walking or driving, pause. In the walking, in the driving, if you're sitting there, there's kids in the background, cleaners, husbands, wives, roommates, cats. Stop. In the midst of the movement, let yourself get still. And relax. Pause, then relax. This is a relaxed practice. This is observing and witnessing from a relaxed place, not tense and hyper and super focused. This is a relaxed focus. And then just breathe. So for a few moments now, let yourself become still, quiet, and just notice your breath. Quiet, yet awake and aware. relaxed, anchored by your breath. That's it. That's the great discipline. That's the practice that the Buddha himself, even after he became the quote unquote Buddha, and Buddha just means awake. Literal translation of the word Buddha is awake. If you're awake, quiet, paying attention, noticing, awake, actually alive to your life, not stuck in our head and in a dream, you're Buddha. That's Buddha. That's it. That's all that means. It's not a God. It's just living life awake to your life. You get one life that I know of, right? So let's take the practice a little bit deeper, especially for those of you that are new. Do you have the patience to wait until your mud settles and your water is clear? There's a lot of well-meaning and well-intentioned meditation and sometimes even yoga teachers or just therapists or what have you, who try to get you to get a clear, clean mind, a perfect mind, right? There is no perfect mind. Even after a storm, when a puddle is full of mud, right? Even after the puddle is full of mud, when the puddle is still for long enough, because the only way to get that puddle clear, just like our minds, is for it to be still for a long time. You try to push down the mud, it just stirs it back up. You try to push down your mind. You try to push down your anger, your sorrow, your fear, your happiness, your excitement. You try to push it down, you just stir it up, right? But even after it's been still for a long time and the mud settles, the mud is still there. You don't get rid of the mud. The mud is part of it. The mud's the fertilizer, right? It's just not swirling around and everywhere, right? This is what the stillness is that we cultivate, right? And the good news about this is that, so the essence of a practice then is patience. Patience, and then how does a puddle or a pond settle? It stays still, right? So patience, I also call this kindness, generosity, kindness to yourself, to your mind, generous towards your mind, generous to your hatred. And then you just have to be physically still for long enough for your mud to settle. So that means that this is a physical practice, not a mental one. This is the good news. This is not a mental practice. You don't still the mind. You can't. The Buddha himself could not. You still the body. Everything about the discipline of meditation is about getting physically still. This is what differentiates it from yoga or running, when people like get into the flow or what have you. Those are a doing. This is a stilling. This is a not doing, right? This is the work. And with practice over time, the mud of the mind will still itself. You need the mind. You need to think. Like when I remember one of my teachers giving a talk once, you need the mind and the emotions, right? So if you're crossing the street, you need the emotion that says I'm hungry and I'm anxious for food. I need that emotion to direct me to find food. Oh, there's a restaurant across the street. And I need the mind to look both ways and notice that there's a truck coming, right? I need the mind. It's the attachment to its ideas that causes me problems, right? So we don't get rid of the mind, but we just let it settle. So it's a physical practice. Everything about meditation is a physical practice. You see this form, there's nothing spiritual or esoteric or special about it. It's just a way to sit still for a very long time, but not still and asleep. We're not falling asleep. This is an awakening. Remember, Buddha means to be awake, not asleep. You're not crouching over and going to bed. This is not a laying down practice. I don't want to sleep through my life. Yes, you want to relax. But, the relaxation of, sitting on a beach with cocktails. They actually did a study how 20 minutes of meditation a day for 2 weeks was more effective at lowering blood pressure and long-term health benefits than a 2-week vacation on the beach, right? Because just stopping and relaxing is wonderful. But if you haven't started to actually get quiet and notice your mind, it's fake relaxation. You're not actually looking at the things that are causing you the stress or the pain. So anyway, so this posture is just a means to help you stay still for a long time. And the key to being awake yet still is an arch in the back. You arch your back, your sternum will rise, your shoulders will open and fall. That's it, right? Now, I'm arching my back sitting here. If I'm going to sit for 2 minutes or 20 minutes, and if I try to force an arch, it's going to collapse. And then I'm collapsed in on my breath and my lungs and my diaphragm. But then I'm going to notice it and arch my back. And then before you know it, I'm moving. I'm no longer physically still. So in order to maintain the arch in the back without the effort of the muscles, you just got to get your hips higher than your knees. To do that, people can put a cushion or a bench underneath their bum to raise their hips higher than their knees, which I know a lot of folks do, and that's great, but you don't need that. You can do it in a chair, and we're going to do that right now. You can get it wrong in a chair, and you can get it wrong sitting cross-legged. If your knees are higher than your hips, you're going to collapse, and you're going to be tense as well if you're sitting on the ground. That's going to create tension. This is relaxed. So proper form is, if you're going to sit on the ground, just put something underneath your bum and you'll get a nice natural arch. But no matter how big you are, you can use a chair and get the same effect. So let's go over that right now. The trick with the chair is using the last eighth of the trail. Now, I have to be careful because there's a buddy back here. I don't know if you can see him. He's perched right back there. Hey, Bob. All right, he's gone now. All right, so I can sit on my chair and arch my back, but it will collapse over time, and then I'm moving. In order to have a natural arch in a chair, you just want to sit on the last eighth of the chair where your sit bones are right on the edge. If you go too far, you will fall. But get to that nice sweet spot, and actually do this right now, because this is the key thing about meditation. You get this position right, and everything else does itself. It's like a pond being still. You get the form right, and the practice does its own. So if you're in this class and it's your first time, practice it. And if it's your 80th time or 100th time, practice too. Get your form a little stronger. Get yourself into a nice, comfortable, yet arched position. And again, it's about being physically still. My feet are square and flat on the floor. I'm going to put my elbows at my side and my hands flat. This is the posture of meditation. This is meditation. That's it. So let's do the real work. Forget about the dregs of what I'm saying and get into the actual practice. So come into this posture. Come to the edge of your chair if you're sitting on a chair. Find the spot where you're solid, but the arch is getting done by the chair. Elbows at your side, hands flat. I do teach eyes open meditation. We're not closing our eyes to reality. Yes, it's easier to close your eyes and it's easier to lay down, of course, right? But to actually be awake to life, you got to look at life. So we practice sitting here quiet with our eyes open, not sticking our head in the sand, right? But I'm not going to look out. I'm going to look down. I'm actually going to choose, probably for today, this little knot. It's at a nice 45-degree angle from my eyes, and I'm going to rest my eyes there, but then turn all of the attention to my breath. And now, for literally the most important part of this class, is the next 5 minutes of quiet sitting. I may or may not speak during this 5 minutes at some point to encourage, but it is silent. And especially if you're new, you may be tempted to pick up your phone or to notice an email that comes up, but resist the urge to fill the silence. You will think, you will feel, that's part of it. Just keep coming back to your breath again and again. attempt to keep your attention on the only thing you're actually doing while sitting here, which is breathing. But the added bonus is as you pay attention to your breath, you naturally relax. Your blood pressure slows down, your pulse, your heart rate all slow down. So it's very, very powerful practice in a lot of ways. So let's do the good work. Come into that best posture. Let yourself get still and quiet. And for the next 5 minutes, just practice being awake and alive, anchored by your belly breath. Still, quiet, awake. That's the most important work. The actual sitting, the actual stopping and breathing. And here's the really good news. No matter what that looked like, it was right. Even if you did fill the silence and pick up your phone 12 times, by just getting into the posture and attempting and trying and picking up the phone 10 times, putting it down 11, you're doing the work. You cannot get this wrong. The only way you get it wrong is to not even try. If you try, ideally every day, to just be quiet and still for a few moments or minutes, and then once you've been doing it for a while, for many minutes, your life will change. Life won't change. The way you perceive it, the way you respond and react will shift. The way you respond and react to yourself will shift. It can't not work. There's no way that stopping and paying attention on a daily basis of just observing and breathing doesn't shift your life. I mean, worst case scenario, you just have lower blood pressure. That's the worst thing that's going to happen, right? Yeah. And it's just a practice. Like the Buddha himself, you don't get it right or wrong. It's a practice, right? Ask me your questions, put them in the chat box. I'm going to go over some stuff, some teaching. I have one announcement. There will be no class next week. I'll go into this more. It's once or twice a year going forward, there will be no class. I'm going to start doing my Zen retreats again, and I have one next week. So from Wednesday of next week, I will be offline. Very excited to do, just like we did for 5 minutes, I'll be doing that from 5. I'm not sure if we're starting at 5 or 5:30 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night, sitting in extended silence. Because it's in those deep, extended silent periods that your mud can settle. You know, I've noticed when I do a long retreat, it takes 2 days for me to feel quiet. You know, there's an old saying, it takes 15 minutes to just show up on the mat. In the beginning, if you're just starting, I am not kidding. 1 minute a day is as valuable if you do it consistently. I'd rather you do 1 minute every day than 15 minutes or 20 minutes or a day here and there. In the beginning, I mean, it's always about the consistency. And then you just grow it from there, right? I have been doing this for 25 years. I am ordained, you know, like I'm a lay monk. You know, this is my life. I've made it my business. It's so important to me, right? Don't compare yourself to me by any means. 1 minute is as effective, especially if you're just beginning. 1 minute a day, every day is key. You do it every day, you will change your life. And once you're doing 1 minute a day for 7 or 10 days, fine. Check out 2 or 3 minutes. No need to go fast. No need to make this something that's not easy and doable. And if 1 minute a day is something you find yourself not doing, set a timer, you know, have it go off at a certain time and just take 1 breath. Now 1 breath a day, right? That's what this quote unquote meditation is. It's a practice. This is the key word, practice of not doing. That's what we do. We do not doing. This is actually, I study the Tao with my private clients. It's the first book we study together, and it's an entire book. Interesting. It's an entire book of doing, not doing. That's what the whole thing is, not doing, right? And meditation is the actual practice of it. Not talking about it like I am right now, but practicing it. It's the practice. Like I said when we started, the historical Buddha, who was the Buddha, he had a practice to the day he died. He had his demons and his mind and his lusts and his fears till the day he died. He just had more space from them, right? I don't love the word meditation. There's a lot of ideas around it. There's a lot of different types, and none of them are wrong. None of them are right. Whatever, the one that's right is the one that works for you. Full stop. I just prefer the word sitting. Make it easy, because we're not doing. You know, I'm not going to go meditate. It's another thing to do. No, just sit there. I'm just going to practice sitting there. I got to go sit for a minute or 5 minutes. Then you can even do it on the toilet. Doesn't matter. Make it easy. Make it easy. Ask me your questions too. And this is the mind we're talking about. There's questions. Um, and here's the thing that really comes up with time and why the extended retreat for me at this point is so imperative. It's as you practice not doing, you naturally begin to practice not knowing, because we don't know. I don't know what this life is for. I don't know what's right or wrong. I don't even know who I am. Hell, and I say this all the time. It's not even that. And this is what it actually occurred to me probably 8 or 10 years ago on one of these 7-day long silent retreats where we're sitting all day. I remember very clearly having this, after days of sitting in silence, and I've been working on not knowing and practicing it, because it's a practice, especially at first. I realized it's not even that I don't know who I am. I don't know what this is. I really don't know what any of this is. I can't. It is unknown. You know, I actually had my meeting with my teacher every Friday at 9:30 in the morning. And, you know, we were talking today, and I'm going to do some of the stuff that we talked about today too, because it was just really nice. And she's like, you know, this is mind. This is all mind, right? Expanding. The universe is constantly expanding and contracting, right? The consistent expansion and contraction of the universe, like the breath expands and contracts, right? And, you know, she's like, we are it. We're moving with it into the unknown. You go to like the nebula and the black holes, and you go out there, it's all moving into the unknown. And how do we practice this great not knowing, the great wonder of whatever this life is? By sitting. As long as I'm stuck in my mind and its ideas of what it thinks it knows, I can't not know. I can't truly become intimate and experience life. So we sit and practice. Okay, question. Here's a question. Thank you for your question. I've had a full 3 weeks, and there have been a few days scattered through in which I did not manage to sit specifically, so to speak, for the 20 to 30-minute practice I started in January. I did stop to breathe wherever I was, whenever I could, even if just for a few minutes or breaths. But there's a voice in my head telling me that by breaking the habit, by missing the full time for scattered days, I've lost all the benefits of the practice I had begun. Is this a truthful voice? You don't know. Right? And let's get deeper here. You know, this is talking about the expansion and contraction of the universe, right? There's nothing to gain. There are no benefits. Was it last week that we talked about Bodhidharma and Emperor Wu? Or did I put that? If you guys were on my mailing list, I finally sent out an email after weeks of not, I think it's been almost 2 months of not writing on my end. And if you want to join my mailing list, it's on the website. And at some point it's on there. I'm not sending out the updates on the calendar because the calendar, it tends to spam people. Specifically, I've learned if you have Apple devices, is there's some sort of problem between the Google Calendar and the iCalendar where you will get multiple alerts. So I've shut down all the alerts, and that might actually help you guys too. But anyway, so I talked in yesterday's email about Emperor Wu. The title of the email was, I regret this deeply. And Emperor Wu has this beautiful passage where he says to effect, you know, I met him without meeting him. I encountered him without encountering him. Now, as before, I regret this deeply. This is Emperor Wu. Now, on the death of Bodhidharma. Now, the story of Emperor Wu and Bodhidharma goes back. So Bodhidharma is considered the first patriarch of Zen. He is the man who brought the practice of the sitting, what we've just done, to China. Buddhism came overland. The texts, the stories, the writings of the Buddha and the others, they came overland from India to China, but the practice didn't come with it at first. So people talked about Buddhism, talked about this not knowing and, you know, cutting through knowledge, and they did a lot of talking and thinking about it. But it wasn't until Bodhidharma came, I believe it was in the year 564, From India, he sailed to China. It was like a multi-year trip, and he brought the practice of it. And when he got to China, and his mission was actually by his great teacher, to bring the practice there, to establish the practice. That they're just talking about it, they're not doing it. This was the mission he was given. And for the first 20 years, he did nothing. It's a great story of how you don't have to do something to achieve, right? But he was known as the wall-facing Buddha, right? Because he sat for the first 7 years he got there, he just sat literally in a cave and faced a wall, because he had these ego ideas that he was very conscious of, that he knew had to drop before he could really teach. And he sat in that cave for a long time, and at some point, word got around about this guy, this brown Indian Bodhidharma guy, sitting in the cave, the wall-facing Buddha. And he became a powerful teacher just by sitting there, that example of the doing of it. And at some point, the emperor himself, who had been a big fan of Buddhism, he had read all the scriptures, he had studied it, he had pagodas and temples built throughout China. He was a big advocate of Buddhism and this teaching. He's like, this is great. And he called to Bodhidharma to have an audience with him. And Bodhidharma came, and Emperor Wu asked, I have had people copy the scriptures to put the books out to everybody. I've had temples built and pagodas built. What merit have I gained? And Bodhidharma looking, could you imagine being a foreigner, looking so different, and meeting the emperor, the president, I don't know, who's the biggest figure you can think of, and meeting him, and him asking, I've done all this stuff for your cause. What merit have I gained? And Bodhidharma had the courage, the knowing, the self-knowing of not knowing, to him to say, no merit. And he's like, no merit? The emperor asked, no merit? And he's like, what is all this I've done? And Bodhidharma says, vast emptiness, nothing holy. Vast emptiness, nothing holy. And the emperor had studied enough, though, to have some intuition. Because, in any other case, you'd shoot him dead. Vast emptiness, nothing holy? Look at all I've done. Vast emptiness, nothing holy. Tomorrow you ask, what is all the benefit? What is the gain, right? Vast emptiness, nothing holy. No benefit, nothing to gain. The emperor asked, he took a moment. He's like, who are you? Who is it that stands before me? And Bodhidharma said, I don't know. Technically, he said, not knowing stands before you. Not knowing. I am not knowing. Because, is there any benefit? The sun will burn out. I've quoted this so many times, in the second book of the Tao, which is the second book that we study after the first Tao. There's a commentary by Stephen Mitchell. And I think I said this last week too, right? His quote goes, looking up in the Bardo realm is the Tibetan liminal space between lives in reincarnation. In the Bardo realm, looking upon the lone and level sands, under which his mighty works lay buried. Ozymandias, also that's the given names of Ramses II, the great king of Egypt, who built the great kingdom of Egypt, Ozymandias decided next time around, he'd be a shoemaker in the Bronx. Not in the south of France, not a florist, a shoemaker, the lowliest of the low, in the Bronx, in the boogie down, in the dirty, no merit, nothing to gain, just this moment to live. There is no gain, there is no loss. Just another breath. You can't lose a thing. Come back to the practice again and again. You can't do it wrong. You can't get it right and you can't do it wrong. It's just your life. That's what this is all about. So Roberta, Tamara, that's an interesting question. I fell off the wagon for a week and didn't have the length of my sits. However, I did do a little each day, even though it wasn't as long as before. So I say I sat, I did it. And then I picked up back where I left off. I remember that. We talked about that, but that was like, there was a mind thing, right? Do I have this right, Roberta? There was a mind thing of like, oh, I lost it. And then we talked about it. You're like, no, okay. And then you just got right back on it and got right back to where you were. And there was nothing lost. I would say, in fact, those times that you fall off and don't practice are the best when you've had a solid practice, because that's when you realize, one, how important the practice is. That intuition, I think, is just nudging you to practice, right? Because I know, like for me, I know I have to go sit for a week. It's been over a year since I've had a long, extended, silent practice, day after day, of really getting quiet, of seeing through what I think I know. I need that. For me, that's what I need for me. It's not for everyone, right? But there is that voice of like, get quiet, get still. But there's nothing to gain. There's no quiet to attain, right? It's just the next moment. I'm only ever alive now. Everything else is in my imagination. And when I said I'm only alive now, that's a few seconds ago, it's already gone. This is the practice of being awake to your life. This is why we practice with eyes open. Okay, I hope this is helpful to folks. So sitting, also known as meditation, whatever you want to call it, is just the practice of paying attention to your life. When you sit, when you specifically get quiet and come to your breath, you are specifically paying attention to yourself, to your body. This is a body-based practice. That's what the Buddha taught. Quiet, long time sitting quiet, attention on the body, on the breath. Pay attention to yourself. When you put the attention on your physical body and your breath is when you get to see the thoughts. And as you see them, you realize how empty they are. The thoughts of, is this a truthful voice? Actually, let me actually take this further, what you said, Tamar. Is that a truthful voice, you asked? There's a voice in my head telling me that by breaking the habit, by missing the full time for scattered days, I've lost all the benefit of the practice I had begun. Is that a truthful voice? Don't ask me. Ask yourself. Get quiet. Listen to it. And it might take time. Only you know the answers for yourself. Spoiler alert, you don't know the answers. None of us do. There is no answer. But we keep questioning. Master Bassui has, this wonderful, wonderful text, Mud and Water. His entire teaching is, who am I? And he encourages his monks, no matter what answer you come up with, question that, because it's not the answer. But keep asking, who is it that sits? Who is it that hears? Who is it that thinks? What is it that thinks? Where's this? What is this? Keep asking. And don't believe your answers. This is the work. How wonderful. How wonderful. So we practice paying attention to ourselves, to right now. Not the person in the past that I hate or the person in the future I hope to become, but myself right now, whatever is coming up. But without knowing. With doubt that what I think is true. This is the practice again and again and again. Oh, Zen Master Bassui. The collective teachings of Zen Master Bassui, Mud and Water. It's pretty advanced. Check it out. Ask me questions if you study it and let me know the pages. I really, really recommend starting with the Tao. 1,000 of them. This is the book. Start with the one with the rocks on the cover. I'll probably do a class in September again. We did that last September. If people want to do a small class to study it, if you want to work with me personally, of course, that's a thing, but I know that's not for everyone and not everyone can afford it or whatever. But we study this. If you get this book, Stephen Mitchell, Rocks on the Cover, he has a lot of versions of it. Get the one with the rocks on the cover because it's the only one that has the interview with him in the back. If you get this book, and Dima, you might have already studied this, so this might not be for you. We start with the foreword, read the foreword first, and go back to that foreword 1,000 times. And then before you start chapter 1, then read the interview with Stephen Mitchell in the back. Do those things first, get the foundation and then dive into the Tao, and then you can just use it. I carried this around. I first studied this book in 1995 or 1996. I can't remember. Sometime 1995, 96 was the first time I studied this. And I had a little pocket version of it. And that thing came with me everywhere for about 8 years. Everywhere. And I just open up to a page, read it, sit with it. And there are passages in this thing I've only started to understand recently. And every time I read any of it, though, it's always brand new. Always brand new. So that's where I recommend starting, because it gives you a real foundation of not knowing, of not doing, in a very digestible and short. Like the chapters in here, right? They're like tiny. You can do that. You can sit with, when I work with my clients, we sit with a chapter, maybe two, sometimes 2 or 3 for a week. One of these little chapters, sit with it, let it cook and brew, right? And then we move on from there. So this is the great work. This is the great work. So let's do it for a few more minutes. Let's do the great work. I'm going to do 3 minutes. If we have time at the end, we'll do another 5. But let's do 3 for now. Let all this not knowing cook. Let it cook. There'll be a bell to start and a bell to end. There's a fun teaching that I'd like to do today. That's why I'm only going to do 3 for now. But come into that best posture. Remember, this is a physical practice, not a mental one. Get into the posture. Have the intention to just pay attention to your constantly moving breath. The breath is constantly moving. You can literally pay attention to it. It's never the same. Two milliseconds apart. Always moving. Pay attention to it. Get physically still. And just practice noticing. Yeah? This is your life. Practice paying attention to it without knowing, with deep curiosity. Deep curiosity. Nothing to gain, nothing to lose. Just this moment to be curious and alive to. That's it. No matter what it looked like, it's perfect because that's what is, right? Practice, practice, practice. Practice every day for a minute. Some people are at 20 or 30 minutes, wherever your practice is at. Commit to doing it every day. And if you fall off, let that be your teacher too. You know, one of my biggest teachers to the power of this practice was when I went to grad school. It was my second time going to grad school, so I thought it would be easy the second time, but I went into a very different field of study than I had been doing before. And I was in a pretty intense atmosphere, both academically, but also socially. I'd never partied more in my life than my 2 years in grad school. And it was a lot of fun, but my practice fell off. And it had only been the few years prior to me going to grad school that I'd gotten really serious about my practice, where I had been doing like 20 minutes in the morning, at night, going to my Zendo and meeting with my teacher 3 to 5 times a week. But I noticed in that time, whenever I sat, there was 2 versions of sitting that I had. Either I was literally nodding off and falling asleep the whole time. And the only way I wasn't falling asleep the whole time was if something had triggered me and my mind was racing. Maybe some cute boy talked to me, or I had a great idea, or something happened, or something happened at work, and my mind was like in a dialogue, right? 2 ways of sitting: mind racing ferociously or falling asleep. And a piece of me was like, is this doing anything, right? So I go to grad school and I try to sit a bit, but I'm probably still sitting. I think I still managed to sit most days for at least 10 or 20 minutes, but I wasn't meeting with my teacher anymore. I didn't have my community. I wasn't doing the 3 to 5 times a week of the additional hour and a half of like a block of sitting like I do with my Zendo. And, I was eating chicken wings and drinking a lot of wine and like all this sort of thing, and doing problem sets and case studies, and there were so many other priorities. My practice fell apart to what I would consider a practice. And it was in that time that I noticed how powerful my falling asleep and mind racing practice had been for the years prior. I didn't know how much that had actually grounded me until I wasn't doing it. And it was then that I really committed. It was in the absence of a practice and a community that I committed to a practice and a community. Right? There are the 3 pillars of Buddhism, of Zen, right? Well, the 3 pillars of Buddhism: Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Buddha, the sitting, we just did that. Right? You sit, you practice being awake. Buddha just means awake. Dharma, the teaching, where we're going to do one of the teachings, right? I've talked about a few of them: Emperor Wu and Bodhidharma, the Tao. Someone was asking, last week with the Zen in the title. I don't know. They almost all have Zen somewhere in the title. Sorry. Sangha, Buddha, sitting; Dharma, teaching; the dregs, they're always the dregs that are someone else left behind; and Sangha, the community of people that sit together, even if it's virtually like this. There is a power to this. And those 3 things really are the foundation. We've created I think, an awesome little community here, right? I see most of your names. I recognize most of you. There's always a couple of new folks that come in and out. I hope that you stay. It's the same link every week. Oh, there will be no class next week, though. Probably the only time in 2021 that there will not be a class, but next Friday there will be no class. There is a small chance that there will be a class on Thursday at noon. I have to check out what the Wi-Fi situation is, because we don't start our retreat officially until 6 o'clock on Thursday night. So I have to see, like, a couple of my Dharma brothers and sisters will be there. I have to just see what the situation is, what the Wi-Fi is like. If I do, you do need to be on my mailing list. It will be a last minute kind of pop-up thing, and I'll send something out if I can do a class on Wednesday. I'm sorry, on Thursday. We'll see. But on Friday, definitely not. We will be in full on lockdown Zen. So no class next week. You're welcome to be on my mailing list if that's what you like. But after next week, We're here every week. It's the same Zoom link. It doesn't change. The only time this Zoom link will change is if Zoom makes me, right? This will be here. Use this community. If this is helpful and useful to you, use the community. Let this be a foundation of your practice. If it doesn't work for you, that's good information. It's a data point. Find another community. Find a teacher. Find the one that speaks to you, because that's the one that speaks to you. There's no right or wrong, just the one that works for you. All right, we only have a few more minutes left. The one that I think it might be, and it's not here, it's actually up on my big lazy chair over in the corner, is making Zen your own. Is that the one? Was it yellow with like the Zen circle on it? Making Zen your own. That's by my teacher, and actually it's the 4th book I study with clients. Is it 4th or 5th book? 4th book I study with clients. That's Making Zen Your Own and that's actually my personal teacher, Janet Abels. Making Zen Your Own. That's a great book. I mean, it's a great book. It is pretty advanced in a lot of ways because it has a lot of Zen teachings in it and a lot of Zen terminology, emptiness, like impermanence, a big piece of Zen that I don't get into people with for a few years, even working personally with me, is the emptiness of all this. Because that can be, if it's brought in too soon, 1, it doesn't make sense. 2, it can be very depressing. When you're ready for emptiness, it's actually wonderful. It's like, it's all empty. It doesn't matter. Anyway, okay, so this is the teaching for this week. I asked last week, and I'm asking, I think this is really the whole point of this practice is, what is the point? If this is all empty, if there's nothing to gain and lose, if there's no merit, as Bodhidharma so painfully said to the emperor, building great temples, right? Having the texts transcribed and dispersed. No merit, nothing to gain, nothing to lose. Then what's the point? What's the point? What is this living? Well, it's just to live, moment by moment, actually being alive to this wondrous, crazy life. It's shockingly simple, but our minds still try to figure it out and struggle with that, struggle with the simplicity of it, which is their job, right? So there's all this Dharma, this teaching, to help us kind of move around that. So there are the koans that I mention all the time, the riddles that you do with the teacher. And this is a great one. And if you ever work with me, I always want your books, whatever they look like, to be messy. Or at least my books are, right? Lots of notes. So here's the koan. What's the point? Knowing how to beat the drum. That's the point, right? Knowing how to beat the drum. Hoshan, a great teacher, imparted some words to his monks. Cultivating study. That's what we're doing right now. Cultivating study is called learning. Cutting off study is called nearness, also known as intimacy, right? Not knowing is most intimate, right? Fayan said to the monk, right? Not knowing is most intimate. Cutting off study is nearness. Going beyond learning and not learning, going beyond these two is considered the real going beyond, the real living, right? So, it's talking about first you study, and at some point through the study, you realize there's nothing to learn. So then you cut off study, but that's also a doing, right? You're like, I'm not going to study anymore, right? He's like, going beyond study or not study is the real going beyond, is the real moment to moment living. This is what Hoshan is teaching. And a monk comes forward and asked, what are you talking about? What is real going beyond? And Hoshan said, knowing how to beat the drum. Again, the monk asked, what are you talking about? Wait, what is the real truth? What are you talking about? Hoshan said, again, knowing how to beat the drum. And he asks again, when a transcendent man, When a Buddha comes, how do you receive him? Like, what do you do when you meet someone, or when you meet pain or joy? When something happens, what do you do? Hoshan said again, knowing how to beat the drum. Right? So he says again, and there's one more passage, but it's a little esoteric, where it goes, mind is Buddha, mind is not Buddha. It says knowing how to beat the drum. But let's not get into that, because that'll be mind stuff. Knowing how to beat the drum. Beat the drum. Drum beat, drum beat, drum beat. Keep moving. Don't stop. Don't get stuck. Keep going. Now, he doesn't just say beating the drum, though. He says knowing how to beat the drum. I've talked for half this class about not knowing. And here this great master is saying knowing. Right? And I want to pull this into one of my favorite poems by Yeats. Yeats, among school children. We all have probably heard this at some point, right? And we don't have a lot of time, so I just want to go to the last line here. And this is just the final stanza of this poem. How can we know the dancer from the dance? You hear this in every single thing, right? If you want to be a pitcher for the Yankees and get up on that mound, okay, they're not doing great right now, but let's not talk about that. I can't get on the mound at Yankee Stadium and even get the ball to reach the home plate, much less strike someone out, right? Because I haven't practiced. You go to the Met, you go to ABT, the American Ballet Theater, right? And you see a dancer, you see Misty Copeland, right? How do we know the dancer from the dance? She got up there by practice, a lot of disciplined practice, 8 hours a day of serious practice, right? It's a practice after practice, right? And then through so much practice, when the music comes on, she doesn't even think. The dance dances itself, right? Actually, the only thing that, if anyone's ever performed or acted, right? Like, when I was young, I used to dance, like all little girls from New York dance, right? Like, y'all go to dancing school. And you know that you can do that recital perfectly if you've practiced enough. You do enough rehearsals, that music comes on, the dance dances itself. The only thing that would get in the way of a good performance is my own mind. The only thing that gets in the way of a perfect pitch is the pitcher's mind, right? The pianist at Carnegie Hall, he practices. And once you get there, whether it's to the pitcher's mound at Yankee Stadium or Carnegie Hall, you actually practice more. Because the more you practice, the more it just flows through you. The easier it is to get out of your own way. It's why I'm going on retreat next week. Because this practice is the key. You want life to live itself? You want this not knowing to come through? You must practice. He doesn't say just beating the drum, knowing how to beat the drum. It's the training, right? He doesn't say don't cultivate study and then cut it off. You must study. You must practice, right? You must practice. This only works if you do it. Dancing, drumming, the doing, not doing of life, it's a practice. And like the Buddha himself, you don't get it right. You just keep practicing. And then more and more it just comes through you. Any good dancer or gymnast or artist or anyone, writer, you know that the work is to get out of your own way. You must have the discipline. You must sit at the typewriter. You must go to the class and practice your tendus and your jetés, your chords, your pitches. Practice, practice, practice until it just comes through you. And that's what we do each week. That's the whole point of this. Practice, 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 repetition, the discipline of showing up on your chair every day for a minute or 5 minutes, whatever it can be. Practice, practice, practice. And to Tamar's earlier point, right? Misty Copeland, one of my favorite ballerinas with the American, where is she? She with ABT? I don't know where she is anymore. She's practiced her whole life. If she goes on vacation and doesn't practice for 2 weeks, she's still Misty Copeland. She might get a little sore or rusty and might have to practice for a few days before performing, but that practice never left her body. The only thing that could get in the way is if someone asked her to dance and she said, I haven't practiced for a few days, I can't dance anymore. That's the mind. The mind gets in the way, right? So we practice. And we practice seeing through when we mess up. Keep moving. This is why the drum, though. Keep beating the drum. Keep practicing. Don't get stuck. It's when our mind thinks we know something, that we're right or we're wrong, we get stuck and we suffer. And that's fine too. Get stuck. And practice, right? We have another visitor. The kitten is here. He's such a big kitten now. He's so old. He's not that old. He's like 5 or 6 now. He's 6 years old. Yeah, you just turned 6. In April, you turned 6. Big old man. Look at these boys. Okay. So to close us out, we're over time. But let's actually do it one more time. Pause. Breathe. Even if your mind is running or there's a cattail in your face, come into your body. Notice. Notice the thoughts in your head, the emotions in your body, the cattail in your face. And allow it, but stay with your breath. Breathe. Just a few moments. Re-anchor. Center. This is the great work. Shockingly simple. Just a breath. Thank you guys for being here this week. I most likely will not see you next week, but I will see you in 2 weeks. Same link every time, even if the calendar isn't updated. I will cancel next week's class on the calendar. And hopefully that won't spam too many people too many times. But that does not mean that class won't be here 2 weeks from now, but it's always the same Zoom link. Thank you guys. Sit strong. This is your life. I get one that I know of. Practice, because it's a practice, paying attention to it. That's it. Can't get it right. Can't get it wrong. Just a practice. Kitten wishes you a wonderful weekend. Little fur ball. Thank you. I will. I'll be sitting with all of you. I will be sitting. You're sitting with me. 5:30 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. Right? Sitting. Getting into the deep, great silence. Okay. Thanks, guys. Woo! Hey. Don't knock over the computer, bud. Cats. All right. Thank you, guys. See you guys in 2 weeks.